Welcome to the VIFF podcast. On today's episode, we talk to Liz Cairns about Inedia, which will have its world premiere at the 43rd edition of VIFF, as well as her future projects. Welcome to the VIFF podcast. This is your chance to get the inside track from the people behind the films you love and the films that you're about to discover. This podcast was recorded on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations. Recorded during the 43rd edition of the Vancouver International Film Festival, these conversations take us behind the scenes, with the creators bringing their work to the big screen. I'm Curtis Woloschuck, Director of Programming at VIFF, and today I'm joined by Liz Cairns, Director of Inedia. Liz Cairns makes a mesmerizing feature debut with a story of a young woman suffering from mysterious food allergies who joins a remote island community practicing alternative healing methods. Liz, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Curtis.
I have a very distinct memory of the 2021 festival. Your previous short film, The Horses, had won an award at the festival, and I saw you at the VIFF Center. And you were heading up the stairs talking about writing this film. And you're like, writing feature films are just like a completely different beast. And wondering, about that process, maybe just the writing process for yourself. Was it a natural progression moving from shorts to features, or did it represent just a completely different challenge from what you're anticipating?
When I started writing Inedia, really what I was drawn to was these stories of people that I had read about and started tuning into that had lived on light. And I don't think I necessarily knew it was going to be a feature, but then as I started spending more time reading these stories and researching, I started to piece it together as a feature. And wanting to move away from the short format, wanting to make a longer piece. But then the writing process proved so profoundly difficult at so many different times throughout the process that it was really, really fundamentally kind of pushed me to think about my approach to filmmaking, which I think sometimes in the short format, you can make a film and you can explore one idea or one moment and do that really well. But in the feature, you're sort of navigating, a much longer journey in somebody's life and, often really, careful structure work and so many different characters and bringing that all together and trying to tie it together thematically. So it was just extraordinarily difficult. And also I was working with more personal material on this one, and that really forced me to go inside myself, probably more than I would have wanted to when I started on the process. But then you're in it and you can't stop.
You've accepted the money. You got to make the film now.
Yes.
That writing process can be such an isolated piece of work as well. And you suggested that you were exploring some personal pieces with this. I don't want to ask you to disclose anything, but just maybe wondering for yourself as a writer, how do you maybe practice self-care in that space when you are operating on your own in those sorts of spaces?
I think when I embarked on writing Inedia, and I was interested in these people that claim to be nourished by light, and I started researching the practice and found it went across all throughout history. I didn't think it was related to me necessarily. It was only when I went and spent some time with people that practiced breatharianism that I recognized myself in them. And that was a major turning point for the project. That was actually a point that I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't really want to look at myself and confront this, my fraught relationship with food, which at that time was much better. But so I actually had to put it aside for a while, and I had to tell some of the people that were working on it with me, I need some rest and to take some time. And then I came back to it and I would work on it and I would kind of get into the muck of it again and have to take another pause. So it was a very slow writing process, not necessarily because I was toiling away every single day for years. I just had to put it aside, come back to it, see it with fresh eyes, and also just find compassion for myself in that process. And it was really only the turning point when I think I'd been working on the script for so long, it really wasn't going well. I wasn't happy with the drafts. And then the turning point was really having to go into the darkest parts of what I'd experienced with my relationship with food and really be super honest about that. And I think that's, the film that we see and the role that Amy Forsyth plays as Cora, we showing some really difficult stuff. And it was hard for me to go there, but I think that's where it needed to go.
Yeah. I I wonder about you mentioned with the feature film, it's a much larger cast. In this case, you also need to cast a community. So we have Amy Forsyth and as Cora, as this stranger in this community. But wonder about maybe the casting process for Cora first of all, and then how you built out the other characters in order to kind of contrast her, to complement her, to bring these different dramatic elements to the film as well.
Well, casting Amy was, I'm so lucky. Like every day, I think I have to say thank you to Amy for coming on board this project. I was watching audition tapes. We were also putting out, offers to a couple actors I had in mind. But meanwhile, we were collecting casting tapes and we were working with a US casting agent just for Amy's role, or sorry, for Cora. And I was watching audition tape after audition tape, and one of the scenes in the film, Cora is at the doctor and she's sort of pushing and prodding her doctor a little bit, but in this subtle way. She's very defeated. She's been having these allergic reactions. And it was the way that Amy did that scene that was, there was that one and then another scene that she did. And there was just such a beautiful subtlety. I'd been watching, and there's some remarkable actors in the bunch, but I felt like the pain that she brought was so raw, but it was really under the surface, And so I kept coming back to her. I kept watching it. And then we decided to book a meeting with her. And the person that I met, like on the other side of the Zoom call, was so different than the character. She was so bright and open and warm. But then we had this really remarkable, for me, conversation about the subject matter in the film. And I felt like she really connected to what Cora was going through. And I knew that she could bring the depth and the complexity that character needed. So, yeah. And then I knew for the character of Joanna, I wanted to find somebody with, really nice chemistry with Amy, which of course, when you're doing auditions over Zoom, that's really difficult. So we were receiving audition tapes for Joanna, but weren't really seeing like that really enigmatic and ethereal quality. And Dan Beckerman, one of the executive producers, had worked with Suzanne West. And he said, what about Suzanne West? And I knew her from Goodnight Mommy. And she's always taking these really interesting and strange roles of complicated women. So he set up a meeting, and from the first moment of, getting to meet her and talking about the script, I knew she was the right Joanna. So fortunately, when her and Amy came together, I was like, oh, okay, great. It works. Because you really don't know until you see them together. And then, just casting the other parts. It was working through the audition tapes and wanting to build a community. I really wanted to find, for me, the community of Sunhaven, but also the Breatharians more widely, really wanted to come from a place not of judgment, but of sensitivity and recognizing that all kinds of people struggle with disordered eating. So wanting to, just bring together a unique community. So lots of local casting, lots of casting on Salt Spring Island. Yeah.
It there is such a rich tone to the film as well, and I think it comes partly from Coral's where she is at that moment and her own uncertainty and anxieties. That almost feels like a buzz of like dramatic feedback that's like just under the surface. And wondering, for yourself on set, there's a lot of decisions a director could have made in terms of how scenes could be played, and how loose were you in terms of letting scenes play out and dictate the tone themselves, or what would maybe be some direction you gave to actors in a given sequence to know that you'd have that kind of undercurrent of unease?
If I understand the question, like, I guess here's my honest answer, because I do wish that might not be podcast friendly. this process of making this film was challenging because I think I'm still trying to find a process where I can be looser with the actors. And there were times, I think just the scale of the production makes it hard to pivot. And sometimes you see like an electrifying energy or something really interesting happen, but it's too late to change. Right. So there were scenes where we were like, it was there in the room, like this energy and this tone and these performances that were incredible, and we were able to capture them. And other times, you know, you're kind of barreling and you've got to get through your day and you know that something has to change and you just don't have the capacity or the ability to pivot. So that's my honest answer. I think like coming out of making the feature, I went, how can I create a structure for myself on the next project where I can be a lot looser? And I don't know, and sorry if this isn't a useful answer to your question, but what I learned about myself as a director was how important it is I'm connected to my intuition. And there's so many things happening on set. And, you know, really an eating disorder is like a nervous system, like dysregulation thing going on. So when I'm stressed, it's really hard to be connected, and you get so overwhelmed by everything happening, and then you're not necessarily attuned to that energy that you're chasing. It's kind of a messy answer. Yeah. Sorry.
No need to apologize whatsoever.
Yeah,
it was a messy question that I asked as well. So.
I just have been reflecting a lot around how to create a structure where you can be alive to the energy of a scene and always capture it and always chase it. And I think sometimes when you are making a larger film with a larger crew and cast, that can get diminished or it can change or run away from you. And I think that that's very normal. But I've been reflecting on how do you really make sure that you're following that. And I think there's some really incredible moments where we did capture it, and then other scenes where I saw it in the rehearsal and then it was like slipped away, which is, yeah.
You're not tormented by that at all. Is what your nervous laughter says. You're completely at peace with the fact it slipped away.
I had this, like, and now I'm just speaking candidly, but when we were editing, like the editing process was so difficult because you're grieving the film you were trying to make. And one morning I was walking to my editor, Lisa's house, and I saw the whole film reimagined. And by the time I got to her house, you know, I was sobbing. I was like, oh, I figured it out. I figured out what I should have done. And Lisa, like, I explained it to her, and then she thought about it and she said, yeah, but then you wouldn't have Amy.
Right.
It would be a different character. So you do have to kind of relinquish some of that and embrace the beauty of what you did find. Yeah.
Well, there's some, I don't know if it's parallels or bookends, but, you know, talking about that initial writing process being very isolated perhaps, but that final writing process with an editor, I know you and Lisa have known each other for some time. So maybe you can speak a little bit to just be it the support and in the actual construction of the film, but also in being there with you as some of those decisions have to be made about what form this film is going to take.
Yeah, Lisa is I've worked with Lisa. I've been very lucky to work with Lisa Flowers on a few projects. She edited my short, My Favorite Season. She's an incredibly intuitive editor, and very emotionally intelligent. So she could, you know, she really edits from that place and pieces things together. And so we were always sort of like, you know, working in this way where we're really looking at really finally calibrating like the performance and the intention to really tell Cora's journey, right, and where she's at emotionally throughout the story. But then we were having to step back and look at structurally like what meaning we were creating out of this in this broader piece. So we had a lot of tools. Like we had a huge spreadsheet and we were reordering, we were trying things. And what I love about Lisa is that she'll throw something out one day and then, you know, say, this is awful. We don't need it. Get it out of here. And then the next day she'll say, never mind, let's get it back in if we reorder this. And so she was always coming up with new ideas and new solutions for things. And I remember there was this one day we, and all through that process, there was a lot of discussion around like, really what the film is about and again, what I was trying to make and because filmmaking is so personal. So you're reflecting on your own life and what you're trying to express about the world. So Lisa was such a companion in that way because she really understood. And there was we had to really rewrite the ending in post.
Yeah.
The ending as written did not work at all. So we had to craft this new ending and we were trying so many things. And then one day we figured it out. And I remember it was snowing that day and we just went out and like cried and spun in a park together and like let the snow fall on our faces. And like, it was so beautiful. And then like 3 days later, I was sobbing on the floor again. So I feel like I'm not giving you good answers for your point.
These are fantastic answers. That is such a lovely image of like the moment where it all pieces together as well. Because I know that even over the course of the last year, the ending has changed as well.
The ending changed again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know it's been a real journey for you with this film as well. And
and maybe can I talk about the ending a little bit?
Please.
And I'll probably talk about this tomorrow. But one thing that I think in the writing, if I go back to the writing process, I kept trying. There was many difficult pieces in writing this film, but the most challenging was writing the ending. Time and time again, draft after draft, I couldn't solve Cora's. I couldn't bring her to a conclusion, or definitely not one that felt satisfying or in any way. And I reached a point, where I had to go, I think that is the ending. It's it eludes any kind of resolution for ourselves and also for Cora, because truthfully, like recovering from an eating disorder or any kind of addiction is an incredibly uncertain path. And while recovery is valuable and must, we must try to move toward that, it's not easy. So it wasn't about getting Cora out of there, out of this community, or, having a clean ending to her story. I think that there will probably be people that really don't kind of struggle with that, not getting a sense of how she goes on without spoiling the ending. But that was the honest ending.
Yeah. Closure isn't always honest,
Yeah.
Yeah. You, another one of your collaborators, Jeremy Cox, who you'd worked with previously, his cinematography is impeccable in the film.
Yeah.
And I know you, as well as being a director, you've worked as a production designer before. And I think there's a lovely kind of melding of your sensibilities and creating this like very textured or almost like tactility to the film as well. Like it's a film that's rich in mood, but also seems to just have these like really distinct layers of like fiber and material to it as well. And that's not really a setup for a question, but I just love to hear about like maybe some conversations that you and Jeremy had about the visual approach to the film, and then maybe how much of a world did you need to build for the community, or how much that came to you once you were scouting locations.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I love about working with Jeremy, he's very rigorous in his planning and his the way he approaches the project. He thinks so deeply about the story, but also, he takes the time with the filmmakers he works with. So we went to the location well in advance of the shoot. We spent a lot of time shot listing on location, going back, having discussions. One thing with the cinematography was really wanting to like have a sense of claustrophobia, but also as Cora, goes on her sort of fasting journey, finding a way to distort the image as well to reflect her physical deterioration. So Jeremy and I were able to do camera tests on film and try out different distortion techniques, and ultimately landing on something like reasonably simple, but we still felt captured what Cora was going through physically. And yeah, it was just like really wonderful collaboration because we just spent a lot of time together planning out the project. And of course, on the shoot, I'd throw out the shot list as soon as I saw the performance and be like, well, we have to shoot it from over here. But that's how it goes. And yeah, and then of course I spent a lot of time location scouting. I really love doing my own location scouting. I love going door to door, knocking on houses, and I did a lot of that for this film. I was lucky to go to like a lot of the Gulf Islands and do so, and ultimately landed on Salt Spring Island because the community where we shot at is there. And I really wanted to find a place that felt like sacred, with multiple structures, but could also, beautiful landscapes and could accommodate the crew to live there and eat there. So that was a tall order. So we whittled it down to only a couple places and ultimately decided to shoot at Stowell Lake. So already I think that location lended us a lot of production value in the sense of creating the world of the film. And then Louisa Birkin was the production designer. Caitlin Beatty and Bradley Scott Keeling were the costume designer. And we all had many conversations around creating this, a kind of otherworldly quality, but also timeless quality, especially in the costume design. And one of the main set pieces in the film is this cob house that the community is building together. And there's a cob building organization on Salt Spring Island called the Mud Girls. So we were able to do a workshop with them for the production design team. Of course, I tagged along. I was like, I'm just interested in cob building. And so the production design team actually created out of all refurbished materials that cob house and did such a beautiful job. So I really love that. When you say tactility, my mind goes to that wonderful cob house, and just that, I love that feeling of people working with their hands and wanting to capture, that, I guess part of the theme of this film too is like when the, embracing having a body and like a corporeal self. And that means like the tactility, the sensuality of some of these experiences the group has together. So it's this push and pull because they're at once trying to, deny the physical self and the physical needs and, connect to some higher energy, but still being bound in this beautiful place with, the water and the sun. And so for me and my personal journey around an eating disorder is also coming to accept like the body and appreciating everything that it gives us. So I really wanted to play with those things in the film and that tension between the physical self and the spiritual self.
I got some insider information from a member of the crew on their new project. So there's only like 3 of you, so you can probably determine which one of them it might have been. But you are working on something new now, which seems like it is maybe like a bit of a counterpoint to working on a production this size. And my understanding is you're kind of approaching it to just see what it's going to be. Are you comfortable talking about that at all?
I would love to. I'm like lighting up.
All right.
I'm so excited to talk about it. And I'll try to tie it into everything on the feature without denigrate. That's the thing. I'm like, it's because I am really proud of the feature. It's hard to not. I'm like, there's things that I struggled with a lot making that film. I think one of the biggest challenges of making my feature was just I've been really reflecting on how to create an environment where I feel safe. I feel safe to take risks and to trust the people around me. And I did on my feature, but it was just a really big project, and going through the post-production process and that being really difficult as well, it just made me want to reconnect with my roots around filmmaking, making, almost like a film school environment, making projects that are smaller and more intimate and a little bit more adaptable when things go sideways, or if you decide you do want to do something different, you can do it, and it's relatively easy to change course. I'm working on a project now that is centered on a man that I met while filming Inedia. We were scouting for a small pond or a lake, and I was trekking all around the island and, checking out little ponds. And somebody said, "What about Harry's Pond?" And I went there one day and I walked up this scraggly little path that was covered in blackberries, and there was this little octagon. It says Harry's Octagon, and it's a little cob structure that's kind of melting into the earth and covered in, stuff all around it. And I knocked on the door, and this old man in his 80s swung the door open, totally nude, And I said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And he said, why are you sorry? Come on in. And he invited me into his little cob house, and he has a dog named Ziggy, this cute little border collie. And from that day on, I started hanging out with Harry, and I asked him if I could take some photographs of him, which he very happily obliged. And I developed a relationship with him, a kind of friendship. And now I'm working on a more hybrid feature-length film with him that's going to hopefully bring my narrative sensibility, but to a doc subject, exploring our relationship. You know, him as my kind of muse that I met at a time in my artistic career where I was really questioning a lot of my my approach to filmmaking, and he's been such a willing muse and participant. And so we've been crafting a narrative together that we will enact together, and we're going to document our journey alongside that. So it's been really enjoyable, and we had a small shoot last week that it just made me go, oh yeah, this is it.
That's fantastic. Yeah. I look so forward to seeing that.
Me too. It's gonna be a huge departure from my body of work, because I think I've been working sort of on some darker subject matter, usually like, you know, centering like female characters or younger women. And Harry is just the opposite of that. And he's like nonstop. Like the biggest challenge of last week with the shoot was I could not stop laughing. And I know that I have to tone it down because I don't want my laughter on the audio track. But yeah, it's just been a really enjoyable process.
Great. Well, we will turn ourselves over to the forces of fate here. We'll reach into the popcorn box of random questions to close things out.
Okay. Thank you,
and
Curtis.
see what the pieces of paper have for you. Oh, what film soundtrack do you secretly dance to when no one's watching?
Mulholland Drive.
Oh, damn.
The Club Silencio.
Yeah.
Llorando. Is that the song? We had a scene for the shoot I had last week with Harry, where Harry and I are dancing, and that was the song I requested for us to dance to.
Okay, let's stop recording this podcast so you can go and finish that film, because I really, really want to see it now. Thank you, Liz, so much.
I should also mention, for this dancing scene, Harry is wearing a wig and lipstick. I convinced this old man that lives alone in a cob octagon to wear drag.
This isn't elder abuse, right?
I don't know. I don't know. He seems to be enjoying it. I have to tell you this story. It's probably also not podcast friendly. So I sent Harry this script, right? And like, it's an 8-page script. It's actually a script. So last year, kind of on this journey, I thought, I'm going to make another short, and I want to tell this story. It's a true story that happened to me. I met a widower 8 years ago at an estate sale, and I became very enamored with him and the story of his late wife. She had been paralyzed in an accident, and he'd been her caretaker for 20 years. And I found a small diary of hers, and I took it. And I read it, and it was quite devastating. And I've kept that diary ever since. And so I asked Harry if he could reenact this story with me and play the part of the widower, and I would play myself. And I sent Harry the script. I had several discussions with him, telling him about what it is. We were 2 days into shooting it. Harry was in, a dress, a wig, and lipstick, playing the part of the late wife. We're all sitting around at dinner, and a new person arrived who knows Harry quite well. And she said, Harry, what's this film about? And he said, if I know. And I looked at him and I said, Harry, I have sent you the script. I've told you the full story. I don't understand why you don't understand. Like what? He's like, well, you expect me to remember? Anyway,
I think, that probably is a nice, you can ask many filmmakers at the end of the process, what's the film about? Fucked if I know.
Yes, exactly. 100%. Yeah. So hopefully we'll figure it out together. It's been really nice. I feel like Harry's, he's a collaborator on this project. Like his ideas are really interesting. He's so funny, so smart. he has a lot of ideas for his own. Like he has distinct scenes that he wants to film.
Yep.
None of them quite connect, but he wants to emerge from a pit of mud. So I'm working on that. He wants a scene of him drowning in the ocean. Like he's got all these like beautiful images, and part of, what I want to do with him is try to make those come to life as well and try to make some cohesive sense out of them.
That is a beautiful project to embark on.
Yeah.
I wish you nothing but the best of luck with it. Thanks,
Thank
Liz,
you.
so much for being here today.
Thanks, Curtis.
It
It is elder abuse, isn't it?
You're going to go to jail for
He
a long
loves
time.
it. He loves
You're
it.
going to jail for a long time. I hate to tell you. Good thing you're fleeing the country on Sunday.
I know. Oh, Harry.
You have been listening to the VIFF podcast. Thanks to our community partner, TELUS Story Hive, for their support. If you're enjoying the show, please rate and review the podcast and be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Visit VIFF.org to learn more about screenings at the festival and year-round at the VIFF Center.